out there, give us a like or comment, drop into the comments and let us know where you're coming to us from. And as always, as we get into the fun discussion, don't be shy. And please let our guests know if you have any questions or comments. So let me come over here to Facebook, see if we're streaming. All right. I think we are streaming. Beautiful. What's up, Bjorn? I see Bjorn just gave us a like. Appreciate that, sir. And all right. So what are we doing today? Today's Thursday. As we've been doing during these COVID quarantine times, trying to bring you more guests, more perspectives, more things to think about and or consider. And hopefully my internet isn't too laggy here. And so we're bringing you more content than typical. And this week is no different. And I'm excited to bring you today's guest. I've known Curt Hayes for many years, back to the inception of One Firefly. The predecessor brand was Firefly Design Group. And I actually launched this business as a system design and documentation company. And Curt ran, I want to say Curt launched his business, again, one of his old brands, Audio Designs. I want to say he launched that before I launched Firefly Design Group. And, he was definitely one of the trailblazers out there trying to bring valued services to the custom electronics industry. And Curt has been a busy bee, growing his business and his book of services. He's actually rebranded and launched a more comprehensive set of solutions under the BlueDog Group brand. And I reached out to him, and he said he'd love to come on. So he's also got some exciting updates in his software universe that he'll share with us at some point. So let's go ahead and dig right in. Let me go get Curt. Curt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing super duper, man. You're a fellow Floridian. You're down here in Fort Lauderdale with me.
I am. I'm just not too far north of you, actually, right? Up in Boca Raton.
Oh, you're in Boca. Okay, so I'm over in Tamarack, so west.
Okay,
West Fort
Lauderdale. I
thought
you were in Hollywood.
I was in Hollywood. I was in Hollywood for years, and when I moved to South Florida, I actually moved to Hollywood. Had my office there in downtown Hollywood for many years, and but no, I moved west. I want to say in 2013, and lived down in Cooper City, and then we just built a house, and we now moved up to Tamarack.
Gotcha.
So, all right, my friend. So many in our audience may not know you. I'm betting many do. You've been around for a little while. But as always, I would love to start with you introducing yourself and telling our audience kind of a little bit about yourself and your background.
All right. Well, it's a long background because I am getting old. I started this industry originally back in the late 80s, technically full-time 1988. My dad and I started a 2-channel high-end audio store in Dallas called Preston Trail Audio. I heard you mention Bjorn. It was Bjorn Dybdahl that we visited and got ideas about how to do stereo store and things like that. We went on a tour around Texas, and I still see his name around the industry. So I'm not sure which Bjorn you were saying hello to, but if it's Bjorn Dybdahl, how are you doing, buddy?
Bjorn Jensen. Why reboot?
And another Bjorn that I like, and a super helpful one. So we started that store and had it for about 7 years. We were at that time a fastest growing company in Dallas. And then frankly, the economy down there changed, the savings loan crash and things like that. And we closed the retail store, but we had gotten into custom installation. And so that's where I got started. It was probably about mid 90s that we started doing custom at the early days of Cedia, when Cedia was first coming to Dallas, as a matter of fact.
Did you go to the first Cedia or the first Cedias?
No, we were typical integrators. We were too busy.
But heard that before.
Yeah. So, I started making my mistakes early also too. So my background is like a lot of the guys in this industry. I'm one of the guys that have done it all. I've drilled holes and pulled wire and had oversized TVs hoisted through windows on cranes. There's installed racks, serviced, programmed, and now extending beyond that, gotten involved with data management and software. So my background as we approach things is very much from the perspective of trying to think about who it is we're serving, what audience, because there's elements of what we do that have to support sales. There's elements of what we do that have to support operations and administration. There's elements of what we have to do that support engineering and programming. And so having touched on all of those and been intimately involved in all of those, maybe you could argue that I put too much thought into some of it. But nevertheless, my background spans that. We got involved in custom installation, sold that company in 2000, moved to Florida, got involved in MDUs, condos down here. So I've done high-end audio retail. I've done high-end residential. I've done condos. We've done production homes. And now for the past 15 years, have done outsourced design engineering. And that's where we are today.
I want to say when you and I met, it was in that early 2000s area. I'm struggling to pinpoint the exact time frame, but I know you were working with Michael Wall and David Lynn over at Media Design or Media Design Associates. And it was in the that maybe the first MDU boom here in South Florida.
Yes.
I say the first where I was around. So in the 2000s, and there was another one in the teens. But you were putting packages together and really had some innovative ideas around design and engineering and documentation of volume projects like that.
Yeah, that my philosophy is that if I'm going to do something more than once, I want a template for it. So everything's documented, and we started. So like our labor catalog that we still use today and continue to expand on started back doing production homes, where we really needed to be efficient with our labor. I needed to know how long did it take for a guy to do something, screw a new construction bracket into a ceiling, put up a mud ring. And so we just started timing it, and that way we could manage it. And software.
I've got to give you a quick shout out, Curt. Sorry to interrupt. Sure. I normally wouldn't do that, but Justin Johnson just dropped a comment. And so he goes, the BlueDog team is the shit. So I had to put that on the screen. Justin, thanks for watching. And
thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. And hey, you guys are killing it out there, man. Keep it up.
That's right. So I interrupted you rudely, so I apologize.
It's okay. We got an hour.
We have time. Yeah. So you were doing, you were with an integrator, and then ultimately you opened up audio design.
Audio design. Yes.
What happened? What services did you offer, and how has that transitioned into what you're doing now?
So that was the early days of the Crestron independent programmers, the CAPE program, right? And so I knew some guys that were going off on their own and selling outsourced programming. And my thought was, well, if there's a market for outsourced programming, then there's also a gap, if you will, in the market around doing quality system design engineering. And so the premise for audio design was I'll offer design engineering services on an outsourced basis to integrators across the country. And that's how it started. I mean, it was really kind of an experiment. And so I started doing that. And then that started to grow. And that we were audio design through 2017 was our design engineering business. And then in 2015, as a support service to that is where we launched BlueDog Data. And BlueDog Data was simply really an extension of the design service, in that we needed the ability to replicate our master catalog that we use for our proposals and drawings out to multiple instances of software that our clients were using. This was the D-Tool software. So it was really initially a support to that. Now, there is a demand for data. And my philosophy, and we talk about, with what does BlueDog stand for? To me, BlueDog, what it means, what we believe is that successful projects require accurate proposals, and everything stems from that. And to have an accurate proposal, you have to have accurate data. So somebody has to be doing the job of entering items correctly into the software. And when I touch on all those different disciplines, there's data that supports sales. There's proposal related data. There's data that supports administration, POs and pick lists and things like that. There's data that supports engineering with dimensions and IOs. And if that data isn't populated consistently and accurately and completely, then software can't do its job. And so fundamentally, although we're a design engineering company, that's our product. Without the database, we can't do our job. And so anyone who's doing this industry has to have a database. Now that can be an Excel doc that's really well maintained. It can be software. I mean, it can be done different ways, but fundamentally, I believe you've got to have good data to be able to put an accurate proposal together, and an accurate proposal downstream supports your business process.
So there's lots of software out there. There's D-Tools, there's Simply Reliable, there's building proposals in iPoint, there's building proposals in, a plethora of places.
Sure.
And what did you see as the need that, back in the mid 2000s all the way to the present, you're still working and solving and providing solutions around data? What is the problem that exists out there that you're trying to fix that others haven't been able to fix? Or what's the differentiator? Just out of, well, it is a hairy problem, and I get to tell the audience. I mean, I did design work for a while, and data is a beast, because if it isn't right and accurate, you can't build accurate proposals. And then your challenge is exponentially greater, I think, because you're serving customers throughout North America or throughout the United States. Are you doing Canada?
No, really just the US.
Just the US.
Right now, yeah. You start getting into, it's tough enough with pricing and everything else to do the US. When you start throwing different price books into the mix, and when you start throwing, metric as opposed to imperial measurements into the mix, international, it can be done, but it becomes yet another database you have to make.
Well, let's say you're solving a problem here in the US.
In the US currently.
What is it that you're solving, just out of curiosity, that others maybe are taking a different approach to?
I think that what I hear, so I just have to go by what I hear and what our experience is that the challenge is really around sales. It is that meeting of a salesperson with a prospective client, trying to understand what it is that client wants, what they're willing to pay for that, and getting that translated into a proposal. So what is a proposal? A proposal is really just a compilation of parts and labor. It has to, but it's a bunch of parts and labor that have to capture the expectation of that client. So I think the challenge is that the way the industry works currently, for the most part, is that a salesperson will go meet with a prospect. And like we were talking about earlier, you get the rapport going. The good salespeople, they have good rapport. You're talking about all the things, the dreams, it's for these clients. Usually there's this AV system is running in parallel with a dream. They're renovating a home, they're building a new home, and you're contributing to that home, just like they're talking to the guy about the pool, and they're talking about, these other aspects of their house. You're part of the dream. So right now you're dream building. And so you're collecting all this information, and now you're going to go back and create this proposal. So now the way things usually work is that gets built in one of those softwares, D-Tools, iPoint, SRS, whatever it is. But fundamentally, you come back with a long report with a whole bunch of line items of brands they've never heard of. And what the disconnect usually is they flip to the back page and they see a number that was completely out of the realm of whatever they were thinking. So I think that the challenge is that qualification of clients is lacking. I think turnaround of proposals in terms of getting them turned around quickly is lacking. So it's, what we're trying to focus on is shortening the sales cycle. What we're trying to do is say, look, let's help these people understand scope and budget. And that's, to me, that's where everything should start. It should start about scope, which is how many things do you want, and budget. How much is that going to cost? And if you have that information, and like I say, I like to ask questions, where do you want to watch TV and what do you want to watch? Where do you want to listen to music and what do you want to listen to? Do you want to control your lights? How do you want to control them? Do you want motorized shades? And just talk through the different disciplines of things that we do. And if you can then tie a price to each one of those, now 6 TVs with wall, brackets and extenders and back boxes It's not a $600 TV that they can buy at Costco. It's now a $2,500 purchase, and 6 of those is not $6,000. It's $12,500, and you have to help them understand that because our industry today, in my opinion, hasn't shared with the marketplace what these systems cost. So
they certainly haven't made it easy to know what these things cost.
No, look, ask anybody about the price range of a new car, and odds are they can get you close. And certainly if they're going to buy a car, people know, if you're, like I said earlier, if I'm looking at SUVs, I know that a Range Rover is more than a CRV, and I know what's a Toyota Highlander going to be, or a Honda Pilot going to be. I can look and I can go on a website, and there they all are, and here's the price range. If I'm buying a home, if you were looking at homes, you drive around the neighborhoods and it says homes from the 250s to the 700s, or million to 3 million. I mean, what the price range is going to be. So when you go talk to the builder, you're already pre-qualified. But you sit down with an AV integrator and start talking about all these things, and you have no comprehension that you're saying, oh, motorized shades, that'd be great. I want them everywhere. I got all these windows, right? We're down here in sunny Florida. But at $2,500 an opening, they may have no idea that that's going to turn into $50,000.
So what do you I know that you have beliefs and approaches to how integrators should or could be doing this. What is your belief system? How could those listening that are seeking to have a better scoping and or getting to a number more quickly? I call that early phase discovery. I think many architects will call that discovery, where there's a lot of Q&A and education around pricing. But how do you propose integrators do that?
Well, it can be done, really basic. I'll tell you, back in our early audio design days, our pricing model for proposals was actually around budgets. It started back then. Systems were a lot more expensive overall. But we had a model where we said, well, up to $50,000, it was going to be so much money, and then 50 to 150, 150, and it was every $100,000. So back then, what we did was we put a spreadsheet together, and by system, we looked at audio distribution. I've got speakers from $100 to $1,000, $1,000 to $5,000, and I'd put an X on the little, on a spot and say, well, it's going to be $500, and I need 10 of them, and we would just build it out that way. And there's no reason why that can be done. Anybody can do that. You just have to think about what the systems you're going to sell and break that out in a manner that you could talk about. Yes, we've launched an app. All we did was take that concept and put it in app form, because that's all it really boils down to is slider ranges. Good, better, best.
What do you see your customers doing? To me, you have customers around the country, and you've worked with integrators for, at this point, we're approaching 2 decades. You have a lot of experience knowing what's normal out there. What is normal? Like what do a lot of the folks maybe that haven't fully refined, whether it's refined or not, what is the normal state of affairs out on the street today? Again, COVID aside, being locked in your house aside, let's just talk under normal circumstances. What is the industry doing?
Well, it seems to me that normal is what it's been for a long time. You go meet with a prospective client, you being the salesperson, the owner, whoever it is, you take a bunch of notes. The client says, how much is this going to cost? And you say, I'll have to get back to you. And so price isn't really talked about very much. And so that's open-ended. And then everybody's busy. So the proposal, the notes sit on your desk for 2 weeks. And now you've forgotten what you talked about for the most part. And so now tomorrow is the presentation. So it's been 2 weeks and it's Thursday night. You're supposed to meet on Friday, and you got to scramble to get a proposal put together. So now this is going to be a haphazard proposal. It's not really detailed. And it's a number that oftentimes misses the mark dramatically. So what happens is that, the article I wrote called Selling Scope and Budget, the first impression turns out to be bad because the number on the back page is a big disconnect. And now you're backpedaling, trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do? And that sort of a thing. So I think that's the normal process. So the question is, what can we do as an industry to shorten that? And there's software out there that has there is scope and budget software, but the challenge is that even if it's superficial, high level stuff, you still have to have a database for it. That's the challenge. You know, if you're trying to send salespeople out and they don't know what this stuff costs, and you don't have a tool to help them get to a right budget, then that's going to fail too.
So let me make sure so for example, if you're trying to tell a customer, if you want 4 zones of audio, it'll cost approximately this. And if you want 8 zones of audio, it'll cost approximately this.
Right.
You need to have that approximation based on something.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. You've got to have something that you can punch some numbers into in some shape, form, or fashion. And if that's a spreadsheet or, you know, and we've had clients that through the years that developed that, you know, I give a shout out back to Justin. They sold very successfully scopes and budgets and did it with, you know, started with a template proposal and copy and pasted numbers into it. But at least they were deriving scopes and budget, collecting a design retainer so that when it came to us to do the detailed proposal, the success rate was very high. Because they had gotten the client to buy in. And that's why I think scope and budget selling is important, because if you can sell a good scope and budget and collect a design retainer, then you don't have to get upside down in this sales process. And the challenge is learning to do scope and budget selling and getting comfortable with it.
So I'm going to share on the screen here, Curt, this is your website, by the way, right? This BlueDog.
Yeah. Yes.
.group. So everyone should check that out. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump over here. So you mentioned you created a piece of software. You actually, just before we went live, you sent me the login. So ladies and gentlemen, I've had 0 training in this environment. So if I goof up, Curt, I'm apologizing in advance.
It's okay. You can't goof it up. It's a simple app.
All right. So I'm going to, what are we seeing right now? What are we seeing here on the screen?
So all our app did, I mentioned earlier, the aspect of having a price range of things, good, better, best price ranges. So what we did is we took my old spreadsheet that was built in Excel and we made an app out of it. And so what you see is estimates. An estimate is just, you know, it's basically getting with the client and going through the different systems. So displays, audio distribution, video distribution, theater, surround sound, lighting, shading, structured wire, racks, network, you know, all the different systems that go into a quote unquote smart home, you have to capture a budget for. So what we did was just build some software to give people the opportunity to develop that in real time. And we released it way early, by the way. I tried to make a point of this in the website and our release is our initial target for this was to be Cedia, you know, in the fall. But because the industry, you know, we're locked down right now, you know, and so if you're trying to keep your sales pipeline flowing, our thought was, well, you know what, the app's good enough right now. I mean, it works. If it gives you the ability to sit in a screen share meeting like this and talk to a client and develop these budgets, then, you know, do a Zoom and share your screen and talk about, you know, what's your system going to be. So
is the foundational pricing of this, where does that come from? Because I'm going to give an example. A dealer, Justin, is in San Francisco, right, and another dealer might be in, you know, Dubuque, Iowa. And right, there's pricing differences maybe in those two markets, or you might disagree with that. You might say it's all the same. I don't know. But how do you account for the base? So this was originally an iPad app, by the way. I actually launched this app on iTunes the better part of a decade ago. And we didn't have the kind of technical capabilities back then that I have now. I was able to get a developer to develop it, and I got it onto iTunes, and then immediately found out that we're not a software company, because people start saying, well, can it do this? And this is broken. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. So it really just was an internal tool for us. Frankly, it took our little spreadsheet and we made an app and we used it to quote proposals. But so we've relaunched it, cleaned it up. But what I learned is people don't know install pricing. So what we did, some good feedback that we got from that was we moved labor to the bottom and we just made it a percentage. So we're trying to keep this thing really, really simple. So if you go to displays at the top, and it's, I'll be honest with you, I can't see it very well, but I know it well enough I can walk you through it. At the top, you take displays, and fundamentally, this is the process. You say, if I'm talking to a client, so here's the way I present this. Okay, Mr. Client, this aspect of where do you want to watch TV and what do you want to watch? Well, I want to have I want to have surround sound with a big TV in my family room. I want a TV in my master bedroom.
I'm going to want to, I want to have a TV out, the outdoor living area. We're having a pool built. We want to be able to do music out there and TV. And I'm going to want some TVs in my guest bedrooms.
I'm going to try to make it a little bit bigger here. So hopefully I don't break anything, ladies and gentlemen. So give me a second.
You don't have to for my purposes, but I'm pretty familiar with it.
All right, let me just try. Let's see. There we go. And then I think if I do this, there we go. A little bit bigger, right?
Okay. So, and I'm going to take, that was a good pause because I want to break out. And what I really want to talk about is conceptually, like whether you use our app or use something else, conceptually, to me, this is the process. The process is, all right, so now let's break that down. So we want in the context of our app, we want a better TV for the family room. So those slider values, yes, are based on values that are current to the market today. So if you pull something in that slider range, $3,000, say, for a better TV, and you would enter quantity 1. The outdoor TV is a special application in this, and so that might be a $5,000 budget, and I need 1 of those. And then I might have a projector for the theater, and the projector is going to be 10 grand. So that's my best display in this scenario, and I need 1 of those. And then I need 3 TVs, good TVs for the for those 3 guest bedrooms, and they're $500-600 a piece. So you enter the quantity, you enter the budget range, and you get a number. And now for that client, you've just established those, whatever it is, 7-8 TVs. If they're in their head thinking, I was at Costco yesterday and I looked at a TV and it was $1,000, and we're talking about 7 TVs, their head is probably saying $7,000. What we're going to show them is that, well, already the 7 TVs you talked about, or I can't see the number, but I'll bet it's got to be probably upwards of 20 grand. So you've got to get there first. Then you move on down. What about infrastructure for it? Bracket and back box. What about surge? There's 7 back boxes and wall mount brackets, and those are going to be budgets. There's 7 IP surges at $300 a piece. And ultimately there's pre-wire. So we just have those broken out so that you can follow it through. You can put a number and a quantity on it. So when we're done talking about displays, Mr. Client, where do you want to watch TV? We're at a number, 25 grand. Are you comfortable with that? Either they are or they aren't. But we've established now that TVs are 25 grand, and that number is going to drop to the bottom. So now let's talk about, you want a theater. Okay, well, there's a section for theater. There's a section for surround. What's the difference? Well, a theater, in our view, is a room dedicated to, accurate reproduction of film. Theater is, a higher end thing. Surround sound is a 7.1 system in my family room. So we have 2 different things for theater. And when you're in theater, you've got acoustics budgets and things like that we want to take into account. But on down the line, video distribution, network, et cetera. The point being is once you get to the bottom and that number is $175,000, either, we've gotten there block by block, 25 grand here, 20 grand here, 15 grand here. So if they've agreed, you're getting small yeses. And then at the end, you have a scope, a number of things, and you have a budget. Here's how much it's going to cost, or relatively so. And based on real numbers, it's not out of some guy's head. And somebody told me, I thought this was pretty good. They said, well, if it's in the app, it must be right. It's like it builds credibility. So the point of all that is that now I've got a number. We've talked about all these things fairly quickly, no brands, nothing to get hung up around makes, models, things like that. But now we can go back to our system. Well, first of all, we can say, okay, we've talked about your budget. I'm the sales guy. I get paid on commission. But now I've got to go to my sales team. Or to my engineering team. Now it's got to go to engineering. I need to collect a design retainer. So you'll see we've got now in this version a place for a design retainer. So collect 2.5% to 2 to 3% as a design retainer. He's giving you yeses. She, all the way to the bottom. And you've got a number. If you can collect a check there, your odds of getting the deal just went through the roof. So now you take something back to your design team. And for us, what this is valuable proposal intake, because now you've told me I need this many things, and this is what the dollars agreed to. So when you say you want TVs in the bedroom, I'm looking and I'm saying, well, I got 3 and I've got a budget of $600. So let's go find a Samsung that fits that, or an LG or whatever it's going to, Sony, but it's got to fit that budget. It can't be $1,000 or we're over budget. So now I can build that detailed proposal. You've gotten paid to have it written, whether it's your guy in-house or you or whoever, and you've gotten a check from the client. I mean, so now you go back with a proposal that's just fleshed out. Here's the makes, models in the rooms, et cetera. But there's no surprise. This is what we talked about, right? And that's the process to me.
What percentage of companies would you say, Curt, are charging a design fee after they get a budget approval?
Small, really small. 1%.
Why do you think that is?
I think because you have to have something to base. You have to have something to be able to base it on. And if you don't have, in that, how is it done today? I take my notes and I go build the proposal. Well, if all I've got is notes on a yellow pad, I don't have anything to charge a design retainer on. So I think the challenge has been is that you've got to have a structure. You've got to have, again, look, I've sold design retainers on a front and back piece of paper. I mean, I sold a $500,000 system that way the first time I tried it. And I learned this goes back to, I think it was Steve Hayes at Speakercraft. He was a Hayes, so he was a genius too, right?
Clearly.
But he challenged, they did a lot of training back then, and he challenged the guys in the room. I was one of the guys in the room, that you can do this. And so I went and I made the pitch and I developed budgets, all manually, and whoever got had $500,000. And I was like, well, I need to collect a design retainer. And we were going to do a full design for this, all the engineering, et cetera. And so I flipped it over and I breathed hard and I said, I need a 10% design retainer. And they're like, okay. And I was like, unbelievable, it works. So, but you got to have something to base it on. I think that's the challenge.
What do you think that right amount is? And what do you think should be delivered in exchange? Is there a right set of asset deliverables that should be the product of a design fee?
Well, I think,
and I know that's a loaded question, so there's just opinions
it's
here.
all about setting expectations.
That's right.
So yeah, yes, there should. You should set an expectation about what you're going to do. I would show them. I'd show them an example of your proposal and say, I'm going to bring you this. Now, that proposal, in my view, now is going to take those 7 TVs that are good, better, best with $1, and now they're going to be, Sony model this or Samsung model that, Sunbright model this out on the patio or Sierra, whatever. And what you're going to come back to is what I would call a detailed specification. So it's less a proposal now because we have a scope, we have a budget. I'm now going to come back to you with all the parts and pieces that's going to be required to make this dream reality for you. And it's going to be these rooms, it's going to be these makes and models, and that should be the deliverable. And these days, you can do that. I mean, 2% is an adequate budget to get an initial proposal put together.
In terms of project engineering,
Yep.
BlueDog, this is a big piece of your business, right? Sure. Proposal and engineering documentation. And that's a question. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. And if the question is what percentage of jobs should get engineering?
Yeah, and what should that engineering be?
All of them. Obviously, we would say all of them. In the past, that was pretty close to true. In the past, the systems were a lot more complicated. There was everything was centralized. It was all analog. There was a lot of cabling, and they really, even a quote simple system really needed engineering. Today, we see a lot of systems go out that are what we call hang and bangs. It's a TV on a bracket with a Sonos play bar and a sub and an amp with some in-ceiling speakers. And, in truth, it doesn't really need engineering. And there isn't time. They've got to be done quickly. It's all single point cabling, and so I would accept that doesn't necessarily need engineering. I would submit that just about anything beyond that benefits from some level of engineering. So the question is, what level of engineering? Well, if you're pulling wire, I think that you should have what we call a rough end plan. And again, this doesn't have to be rocket science. You can drop little icons on a PDF if you want. You've got to show your technician your penetration point, floor, wall, ceiling, and where's it going to be? So I'm going to put a TV on this wall, and I'm going to pull a Cat 6 and an RG6 and a Cat 6 shielded twisted pair to it. You need to be able to show that. And if you show that, you don't have to spend a lot of time telling the technician what he's got to do. Your drawing, is what's going to support that. And so when I talk about supporting the different disciplines, so we've talked about the proposal supporting the sales. Well, how are you going to, in your business process, if you have an accurate proposal, that accurate proposal should translate right into engineering. And then the question is simply what engineering? So getting back to how much should your design fee be, we believe that every job needs a proposal. So 2.5%, 3% will get your proposal. That'll cover your cost of getting proposals written, particularly if you're collecting design retainers, because they're paying for it. You're not lost. You're not that. There's a lot of soft cost that is lost because people don't track how much wasted time there is on proposals that don't close. So if you can get your close rate up, and you can charge for it, then 2%, I think 2.5%. I would do 2.5%. So that's covered. But then
and 2.5% buys the proposal.
And then what we do is we put in a budget now for the actual engineering. So we look at the project. So when I'm writing that design, when I'm writing that detailed specification, we're gonna say, well, this job's gonna need what to support the installation process? Well, it's gonna need a rough-in plan. It's gonna need a rack elevation drawing. It's gonna need a point-to-point schematic. It's gonna need lighting control. And so based on that, now I have the scope. I know what my drawing is going to entail. So in our world, we'll do a fixed fee for that now. And internally, you could do the same thing. You could say, well, if we're gonna do engineering, what engineering are we gonna do? You might just need a rough-in plan, because frankly, everything's going to hang on the wall. And if the cable's there, you're good. So that's what you got to decide. And so we put that in as a line item, kind of like programming. How much programming are you going to need? Well, I put that in as a line item at the end of the proposal, because that's the only way I'm going to know remotely closely how much programming I'm going to need. So that's the approach we take today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What do you say to the folks that are listening that say, how in the world could I charge my customer 2.5% for that? I'm going to do simple math in my head. I think I might get this right. For that $300,000 project. So my proposal fee is $7,500.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to get my customer to pay me $7,500 when, if I get this job, they think I'm going to get all the profit from this awarded project? So that's the cost of doing business.
Well, so legitimate question. And that's why, I would actually, in these days, you could even tier that a little bit, because a job that size, what you have to keep in mind is so many of the projects just aren't that big anymore.
I only went there because the math was simple. So
right. Well,
I did it in hundreds.
It's more about what's it going to be for 50 to 100,000, because that's the vast majority. If it's a $300,000 job, frankly, you could do a 1%, but you want to get something, because right now you're writing proposals for free. And I think that it's a value proposition. It's saying that I've got to go back and I've got to engage my engineering team. Yeah, we have an engineering team. Our architects drawing up plans on spec. Here, let me design a house for you. And if you like it, then buy it from me, right? They're going to charge for their work. And I think that you have to have enough respect for what you're giving them to value it yourself. And if you're going to go engage paid people to do work, then you should be able to charge for that.
Yeah.
And I know guys are doing it. I mean, I talk to guys around the country that are successfully doing it. And I think most clients, prospective clients, understand that. But I know one thing for sure: if you don't ask, you won't get.
Yeah, no, amen. You don't ask. If you don't ask, you're guaranteed to not receive it. I'm going to give a few shout outs.
I think that if you have a process and you're confident in your process and you can show them what your deliverable is going to be, you're establishing credibility. And I think people like that.
No, I agree. There was a period in my past where One Firefly Firefly Design Group didn't only do work, but we went out and did some direct projects. I never had a client once tell us no to a design fee. I mean, it was almost like, we got to go get our smart people and spend hours, days, weeks, and months engineering and thinking about your project. Of course, we should be compensated for that.
Right.
And I think it's just a matter of those listening, having the confidence, believing in themselves and believing they're worth it. Their time's worth it. And the customer will pay it. just how do you present it? I got a comment here. Steve Powers says, I charge for scope development documentation. So thanks for that comment, Steve. Steve, tell us how you do it. How often do you get your customers accepting that? Do they ever push back on you? Drop that into the comments. And then Allison, she says she's excited to have you on the show, Curt.
Thank you.
And Wesley Albert, he says, I still talk about how detailed Curt is. And yes, that scope. All right. And then you got some family watching here, Debbie, or you got some family. She says, hey, bro. I'm assuming that's your sister.
Yeah.
All right, Steve just answered us. He says, you can take the bullet point scope and go elsewhere if desired. I charge for each level of the work because, as Curt said, I have to do work to any level of work I have to do work to do any level of work for a client. I couldn't agree more. And our dealer, your time's valuable, Curt, your team's time is valuable, and everyone's listening. Your time is valuable. You need to.
Well, and I wanted to show you, there was there's another doc that I sent you that we call the concept drawing. And this is something that we should put up because, again, this is something that anybody can do. Not to give away what we do, but this particular deliverable is our simplest deliverable.
All right,
but
let me bring it up on the screen here. One second.
Design fee, that initial design retainer, and all this is putting pictures on their floor plan. I mean, we call it a concept drawing. You can call it whatever you want, but fundamentally, I'm going to take their floor plan. I'm going to put it on a nice, architectural drawing. I'm going to put pictures of what's in the room. The concept is, I think the customers understand what it is they're going to see in the space. So if they're going to walk into the family room, they're going to see a TV, they're going to see a remote control, they're going to see or not see speakers if they're in ceiling or invisible or whatever. But fundamentally, okay, Mr. Client, this is what's going to be in your family room. This is what's going to be out by the pool. Let's talk about lighting control, and how that's going to work. And so a concept drawing is just, we go to a little extra effort in that we take all the images and make them with translucent backgrounds and, so we pretty it up. But fundamentally, this can be done a number of different ways, but this is a great deliverable to take with that report. And it's not hard to put together. And now it adds a little more value to what you're doing. So you say, well, Mr. Client, we're going to collect this design retainer. We're going to go build a detailed specification, and we're going to build this concept drawing, and we're going to help you understand what it is that your system's going to be if you go with us, to commission your project.
So the deliverable in your case would be a proposal and this drawing. It
could be either or both. We let people pick. I've had people go back with just the output from the scope and budget. They'll just, here's the scope and budget, and I just want a concept drawing, and I'm going to go back and talk to them about that. You could do that. We have people who just do the proposal. They just send me a proposal. That's all I need. We have some that do both. And again, this to me is what's your comfort level. And what does maybe one client might be easier or harder than another. So it's good to have a few tools in your toolbox, right? But these, what I wanted to try to emphasize is the process, less than about, what can we do? Because this is something anybody can do. And it's really a commitment to an effort to scope and budget sell and shorten that sales cycle by at least one revision, one meeting. And these are some ways to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer in this philosophy. If you're out there watching or listening, and if you're doing something like this, drop it into the comments. Let us know how that's worked for you. Just out of curiosity, you deliver this to your customers as like a full-size PDF, and do they print it locally on a plotter in their office and take that into a customer meeting, or how do you recommend it?
Yes, and again, though, getting back to this COVID lockdown, share the screen. It's a PDF. Pull it up on screen and show it to them on screen.
That's where I wanted actually to go next, if you will, Curt, and that is we are in COVID and folks are having to remote sell.
Right.
And or remote do this discovery process. Do you have any tips or advice for the folks that are listening in terms of how to best conduct that virtually?
Well, I think we've touched on it. My approach would be is everybody's familiar with Zoom at this point, and people that weren't are now. And so approaching your client and saying, look, we all believe that this is going to ease up. We all believe that you're going to get back to work on your house, or your house is moving along. What I've heard is that the sales process is still moving. But what we're accustomed to, we as salespeople, is going and meeting with somebody. So let's stay out of the car. Let's use this as an excuse, because frankly, I think going forward, there's a truckload of wasted time driving to meet clients. So the silver lining to this could be that we could start saving a lot of drive time by saying, okay, Mr. Client, we're going to jump on. And again, that gets back to my point of why did we release the app prematurely? It's because it is a tool that you can use online, and you can talk about budgets. So you could go online with a Zoom call, you could build out a budget, walk them through, talk them through, have some numbers to point to, and then pull up, this concept drawing you're going to present for them. That's an example of a proposal, and say, look, let's go ahead and get this thing nailed down. So when construction resumes, in August in full, we'll be ready. We'll have materials ordered. We'll have your drawings done. We're going to be ready to go to work. So it's an opportunity to stay in touch with the client.
Curt, what advice, we're going to wrap up here shortly. What advice do you have for the folks that are out there listening in terms of how to come out of this COVID situation? You've been through some economic ups and downs, in terms of being an entrepreneur and owning your businesses and working with many hundreds of business owners. Do you have any advice for our audience in terms of how to make sure they come out of this thing strong, ready to fight and grow?
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to work on process. I've used the analogy of this industry being like an assembly line. And there's 6 steps. At some point I'm going to do a video, the 6-step video. But fundamentally, you've got it once you've sold it. So there's a sales process, and we've spent the whole call talking really about the sales process. But once you've sold it, now you're going to order, receive, stage, deliver, install, program, invoice, so it's 7 steps. But you're going to do that over and over. All that really varies is the amount of stuff that's going into the particular project. It's like a remote assembly line. So the more that you can make your decisions about, like we really focus on product category selection. If you don't have a product mix that's well thought out, like what in-ceiling speaker are we going to sell and why? And let's not sell every flavor there is. Let's pick 6 models that represent 90% of what we do and sell those. So now I can buy more of them. I can get better pricing on them. I can have, my own advanced replacement. If I'm selling the same control processor over and over, if I'm selling the same TV, if I'm selling the same projector. So I would focus on, we talk about it by product by category. Take each category, display, speaker, rack, surge, and don't buy a bunch of them. There's a learning curve to everything you order. And and your ROI is how many of them can you sell once you've sold the first one. Because every item, and I talk about a volume control, even a volume control, I've run into this before where there's eccentricities to it. The stupid little terminal block on one model wouldn't stay on. We're always having to fidget to get the thing in the wall, because as it went into the wall, the terminal block would come loose and you'd lose a channel. So scrap that one, find one that works, and then sell a bunch of them, because you've got to get it into your system. You've got to order them. You've got some degree of, it can be a TV wall mount bracket. There's still a way of getting it assembled. So pick it and stick with it and sell as many as you can until it's discontinued, ideally, or enough better model comes along that it warrants changing it. So I'd work on product line selection. I would work on process in terms of reports. When you order, the different softwares do give you the ability to run POs by phase. So you can work on your report structure. I want to have a certain set of reports to support rough in, and then trim, and then finish. Getting labels printed. I'll close with this thought. We used to talk about back when I was in the integration business and we were using D-Tools. I got introduced to D-Tools back in 2001. But just insert software, because the software will do it. I looked at it as being the seat of a 3-legged stool. and the legs were sales, administration, and operations. And if you have that accurate proposal, then you have a deliverable that will support those three areas of the business. You have reports to support sales, reports and drawings. There's a concept drawing is a drawing, a proposal is a report. You have purchase orders and pick lists for administration, and you have engineering drawings and checklists to support operations. So you really, what I hated was the Monday morning 4-hour marathon meeting where we all talked about all the different projects. So you have the whiteboard and what's going on in this job and what's going on in this job. I'm like, let's just print a report. Where are we in the assembly line around the Jones project? Well, we need to order for rough. Okay, then give a PO for rough to the order entry people, and they're going to order it and they're going to receive it and they're going to slap a sticker on it and they're going to stage it on a shelf. And then you're going to put it in a truck and you're going to go install it, ideally with a rough-in plan and a checklist, and the technicians can do their work. Why does a project manager have to breathe down, look over their shoulder if they've got a drawing that says you're going to pull 3 wires to this spot? So I'd work on process.
Amen. How can those listening or watching learn more about, and make contact with you and or your company?
Well, you posted our website, so I appreciate that. That's BlueDog.group. So pretty easy to remember. We're BlueDog Group, and the website is www.bluedog.group. And you can reach me directly at Curt, Curt.Hayes, Hayes, at BlueDog.group. So that'd be the 2 easiest ways, and then from there we can figure out who we need to point you to.
Awesome. Curt, it was a pleasure to have you on Automation Unplugged, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right, gang, there you have it. Episode number 113 with Automation Unplugged, sponsored by my day job over at One Firefly. And, talking to Curt brought up a lot of memories of really the foundation of this business, One Firefly. And our origin story was right there beside Curt doing design and proposal work and engineering. And he's really been a leader for our industry. And I know a lot of people look up to him and look up to his ideas and philosophies. So thank you for tuning in. Again, I'll continue to wrap here and say, if you don't follow us yet on your favorite podcast download platform, please do so. Just search for Automation Unplugged and you'll find the show. And on that note, I'll sign off. I'll see you. I don't think I have another show this week, so I think I'll see you next week, and we'll bring you some more great guests and great content. So on that note, I'll see you later.